Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I have been drafted to provide the entertainment for tonight. And the story I'm going to relate to you is something that happened in the World of Wheels show back in the day when we used to run the show. Well, I'll tell you what, let me just read this. Year was 1976, the bicentennial year. The state of Illinois had 10-year-old Kelly Jordan of Normal redesign the license plates. You remember the license plates. The Cubs finished 26 games out of first place. Play That Funky Music, White Boy garnered the number 5 spot on the top singles. Oh, I almost forgot. Time magazine and the New York Times were warning us that mankind, and specifically America, was bringing on the next ice age by spewing smoke into the air, reflecting sunlight back into space. It seemed reasonable at the time. Back in those days, CCE was going pretty strong. One of our big deals was the fact that we were the muscle for the World of Wheels car show. When I first joined the club, and it was specifically for the custom car show, the World of Wheels show, at that point the Chi-Town Shifters was an organization that had been doing it under contract for the producer of the World of Wheels show, but they were an aging drag racing group and they didn't have the manpower to do it anymore, so they hired CCE. Well, after a couple of years of that, the promoter decided to go directly with us, and that was a man by the name of Bob Larrabee. So anyway, this is the World of Wheels show, 1976. Bob Larrabee had gotten a deal on McCormick Place. This was the old McCormick Place. It's not the monster that it is now, but it had the two halls, upper and lower. When we started, this was all on the upper floor.
And didn't we get a really good spot, like right inside the door?
Well,
on the left, like when you first came in?
Well, that's because we ran the show.
Well, yeah, so we got a really good spot.
We could do what we wanted. Anyway, so World of Wheels is a national franchise, and the producer of the show is a man by the name of Bob Larrabee. Now, I'd met him a few times. I didn't think he was particularly friendly, so I was quite content to leave our event chairman, Don Fletchick, who was one of the founders of the club, Steve Epstein, who at the time that I joined was the president of the club, and Harry Jensen. And they did all the wheeling and dealing with the producer, which is fine with me. So anyway, one of the things that these World of Wheels shows had was they would have featured cars. And it was often very highly modified and gorgeously painted special cars.
Well, they had the Red Baron, they had the Charlie's Angels van. They had some really interesting, at the time.
Yeah, it was stuff that showed up on television. And they would also have celebrities. They would hire celebrities to come in, sign autographs. Batman and Robin came one year.
Lou Ferrigno and
the guys from was one of the one of the guys from Welcome Back Kotter was there. I remember that year. I had a few drinks with him. He's kind of a fun guy. Anyway, so there were all sorts of things going on at the show. We had various vendors, food vendors, parts vendors, body shops. They were all showing off their displays, trying to get customers. This particular year, Bob Larrabee cut a good deal with McCormick Place. At least it was a good deal for him. Maybe good for McCormick Place. Not so good for us, because if he had McCormick Place rented for Thanksgiving weekend, he got an extra day for almost nothing for the rent for the place. So that meant we ended up working, many of us ended up working on Thanksgiving Day. Well, it's what we had to do. So the featured car at this particular World of Wheels show was the Beatles' Rolls Royce. Wasn't really a Rolls Royce, it was a Bentley, which, as Larry puts it, is the Biscayne of Rolls Royces.
56.
And it was one of the things that they were going to use it for is radio station promoting the show was letting winners of a call-in show get to ride to the show in the Beatles Bentley. Well, they tried it once. Turned out the Beatles Bentley is not in the best of mechanical condition. It would run, but there was no heater. And this was Thanksgiving weekend. As a matter of fact, that weekend it got down to about 10 degrees. So they made the one run to pick up these girls who had won the thing, and the rest of the time, all the other winners just got a limo ride, which is fine. The thing is, at the end of the show, the real problem there was that we got a phone call from the people driving the truck that were supposed to take the Beatles Bentley to the next car show. They broke down in Pennsylvania, and they called us Sunday night to say that they'd broken down in Pennsylvania, which is basically a 2-day drive to pick something up like this. But they couldn't call us any sooner. The thing is, we had another show moving in. I was thinking of a houseware show or something, moving in that night, and we had to get it out.
Building had to be empty.
Period. So I decided I would try to be the hero. As you might surmise, this rarely works out well. So I called Larry and over and I said, hey, any chance of storing this thing at your place for a few days? Because that's what they said they needed, a couple of days. He said, yeah, well, it can't be inside, it's got to be outside. Well, went to the promoter, he didn't care, car had to go. So I decided, well, I don't know much about this car. Tom Hanley, who was a club member, was familiar with the car. I guess he was part of the abortive attempt to bring prize winners to the show.
He did it one time, because I remember we jumped it and we messed with it, and it had electric fuel pump and all these carburetors and 2 6-volt batteries, and we got it running that one time.
Yeah, well, I did look under the hood once, and I saw, despite everything else in the car being made by Lucas Electric, the ignition system said Delco Remy. I knew if I got it started, I'd be able to get where I was going. Anyway, I decided, and now this is about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I decided it would be unsafe for me to drive this thing because I don't know anything about it, except that it was not very well maintained. So I asked Rick if he would drive Chase. And you and your buddy Bob?
Rob Nelson was my neighbor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Who had come to the show. They agreed to follow me. So 1 o'clock in the morning, we leave McCormick Place. The car did start just fine because it had been sitting inside room temperature. And Tom Hanley gave me a rundown on the car. It had all these buttons and switches on the dashboard with no labels.
It's typical.
It had no turn signal stalk. It was just kind of mysterious. The front seats were black leather, the back seats were pink. And they were all well worn and very heavily cracked. So anyway,
I might also add at this point, because you probably haven't seen this car, it was painted in all psychedelic colors. It wasn't just a black Bentley. It was multicolor. Looks like somebody's bad to remove it after an acid trip. It also wasn't properly licensed or plated. It had British plates, and I think it
This is
said Apple.
Apple
Yeah.
2
So it's
2.
a made-up license plate for their record.
No,
So yes.
Yes, it was right-hand drive.
Actually, the APL 222 plate came on that car.
Okay.
It wasn't made up for.
It was a real
'cause
car, huh?
It was
Real
that
plate.
was the plate that was assigned to that car. Well, way before
We got it.
Okay.
any Beetle ever.
So anyhow, Tom Hanley, who was familiar with the car, hears that I'm willing to drive the car down to Leary's in Frankfurt.
Uninsured.
So he decides to give me a little primer on it. I said, well, where's the turn signal stuck? He says, it doesn't have one. There's a switch on the dashboard. I said, well, which one is it? He says, you see that little stub that comes out that doesn't have a knob on it, but there's a screw, a spring screwed through the hole? I said, yeah. That's your turn signal. You twist it to turn it on one way, and you twist it the other way to go the other way, and then you twist it back, and it doesn't have a canceller. I said, okay. I said, am I going to have any trouble driving a right-hand drive car? He said, no, your tendency is you'll always stay down the middle of the lane. That turned out to be true. No issues. So anyhow, we start the car. Rick starts following me. We pull out, and immediately the windshield starts to freeze. No defroster, no heater, and it's basically a car with headlights and a running engine. Also, the gas gauge was made by Lucas. It said empty. I had no idea if that was true or not. Now, yeah, they did try to go out and bring people to the show, but I still didn't have any idea, so I figured I'll stop at the gas station and I'll pick up $5 worth of gas. Now, today, you laugh at $5 worth of gas. It's 1 gallon.
That would have been.
Back then, it was a little bit better, and
Yeah, it
I
was like
knew
10.
$5 would get me to Frankfurt. So, as I'm pulling up, I drove into the city. Now, 1 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning, 10 degrees, no heater, no defroster, and I'm looking for a gas station in downtown Chicago. I did find one at Congress and Parkway, and it was a block past State Street. Well, there was this combination of stoplights, and I figured, well, okay, I must be in the middle of a double intersection. And I had to wait for a car to go by, and I turned left into the gas station to gas up the car. Rick followed me. Next thing I know, as I'm gassing up the car, is Rick coming up to me, who said,
Apparently, I asked you if you'd say you were driving it. I don't remember, but I probably did.
yeah,
Because I
okay.
I didn't have a driver's license.
Rick comes up and says, Kirk, could you tell these police officers that you were driving my car? Now, a whole bunch of questions popped up in my mind, all fighting for priority. Who am I supposed to say is driving your car? Who am I supposed to say is driving the Bentley? And then why do you need for me to say that I'm driving your car? Didn't the policeman probably see you exit your car? But the top question, the number one question was, what police officer?
As I recall,
Okay.
whatever the intersection was, we were heading in, west, and it was a red light. You turned left, and the gas station was on the corner. So you went down the street and into it. And it's 1 in the morning downtown Chicago. I'm driving my terrible '63 Monza convertible, which had no back window, so it had a lot of heat too.
Oh.
And you stopped and turned left, and I it was a red light. I did the same thing. Some places it's legal to turn left from one-way street onto another one-way street.
But not where you were
But
at that
that's the only thing I followed. I didn't care what it was doing. I wasn't getting left down there.
He followed me.
I followed him in, and so did the cop that was right behind me.
So I asked Rick, why do I need to tell the cops that you're driving I'm driving your car? He said, well, I don't have my license. At this point, I said, oh God. The cop walks up to Rick and says, come here, come on back. He goes back, gives him a ticket. Well, starts to give him a ticket. The other cop comes up to me and says, what's going on here? Well, you know, officer, I'm driving this car from the World of Wheels show and blah, blah, blah. So starts writing out the ticket anyway. Wouldn't listen. So he says, we're taking your buddy into the station. You can come in and bail him out there. Well, where's the station? It's 11th and State. Okay. Well, I didn't realize it was already 1 block west of State. And I had to go in and pay the $5 for the gas that I just put in the car. They take off. I don't see which way they're going. So I figure State Street's got to be west of me, right? So I started heading west. Got completely lost. Bear in mind, I'm scraping the windshield with my fingernails to see through it. I didn't even have a credit card back then. And you couldn't use a driver's license because they were made of paper back then. Remember that?
And when you got the ticket, they took it for bond. Yeah, it used to be if you got stopped in Illinois, you posted your license as bond, and when you went to court, you got it back.
Staple the hell out of it.
So you didn't have one either.
Yeah. Well,
You had a ticket to drive one.
oh, that's true. I was driving on a ticket.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that part.
yeah.
So anyway, he said, okay, we're taking your guy to the station. You can bail him out. So your buddy, Bob.
Yeah, Rob stuck
Rob
with you.
jumps in the car with me, and we go hunting the station, which, well, we ended up in some sort of industrial park. And none of the signs seemed to mean anything. I swear to God, at one point I was on a dead-end one-way street. I didn't know you could have one of those. Whatever. Windows were frosted. It's my excuse. Finally, I find my way back to the gas station. I've probably been wandering around about an hour and a half. I pull in, and there's this grizzled old surly desk sergeant sitting there. And I see Rick sitting on the bench. Must be the Group W bench.
Yep, Group W bench. Like the
And
pencils.
so I go sit down next to Rick, and you started a monologue.
Probably.
He was telling me about how the cops were so brutal and disgusting, and at this point I'm kind of sliding away from the bench, hoping that the cop won't really think that I'm with him, this guy.
I remember there being a lot of people there.
Well, when I walked in, it was just you and him.
Okay, I remember being a lot of people in the room.
Well, maybe they left later. So anyhow, I said, well, did you call the show office? Because they gave us they gave us the phone number of the show office in case anything went wrong. There's no such thing as cell phones back then. And so I asked Rick, well, has anybody been here? Oh, yeah. Well, Eddie and Tom Hanley were here. And I said, well, what happened? Well, the officer first told me it was I had to come up with $50. I said, yeah. He said, well, then he changed his mind when they got here with the $50 from the...
Well, I imagine it was $50 for each infraction, so I'd had two. Operating without a proper, license, and then the stoplight.
All I know is that he told you $50, and then you called the show office.
I don't remember calling the show office. I thought you did. I thought you went down there. I thought you actually went there.
No.
Yeah, I was sitting on the Group W bench, so I don't know what was happening.
But then Eddie and Tom showed up with the $50, all in singles. They took it out of the gate while they were counting the money at the show office after the show. So they come back and they tell Rick, what's going on? I said, well, I need the money. I said, what, the money's for you? Apparently you told him at the show office.
I don't remember calling anybody at the show office.
Well,
I remember Harry getting involved, so I remember getting involved. But, you know, Harry, I think, pulled a string.
Well, I couldn't call him, so I know you did. I didn't know you had the show office number. And you told him that I needed to be bailed out. Because when they showed up with $50 and then found out that it was 100, they had to go back to the show office. Now Harry's in a meeting with the big C's and Fletchick and Steve Epstein, and they go to the door of the show office and says, Harry, come here, Harry. Yes, Harry comes out of the meeting and says, what's going on? Harry, we need another $50. Another $50? What did Kirk do? Well, that's the other thing, Harry. The money's not for Kirk. It's for Rick. It's for Rick. Well, where's Kirk? Where's the Bentley? Harry, we don't know. So they give him another $50, bring it to the police station. By this time, I'm there, and walks in and handed Rick the money. Rick handed it to the sergeant, who demanded, no, count it out, all in once, $100. And we get back. Rick and Rob and I get back in the Bentley, and it starts. Amazing.
Can't believe you shut it off.
Well,
you know, with all that gas you just put in it.
Anyway, so we go back out, we start it up, and we start driving back. And Rick says, I want to go get my car. At this point, I just, I said some things I don't usually like to say. And I said, basically, no, and we drove home. And at which point, another club member had dropped off my car that had been parked at the show, so I could pick it up, and then I drove Larry and not Larry, Rick and Rob. You had to take us home,
because otherwise, you know, we wouldn't have gotten there.
Oh yeah, I had to go home and treat myself for frostbite. Anyhow, so I got to Larry's. It was only supposed to be for a couple days.
This is where my end of the story starts. So the car was abandoned basically by me, and just as today, my garage was full of either customer cars or my cars, and there was no possible way that I was putting my cars outside because I had to work on them. So the only place for the Bentley was park it basically on the street in front, and I just put a beater Corvair in front of it and back of it, you know, so it'd make kind of a roadblock for it. And it probably sat there a good 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh, I thought it sat till February. It was February.
It was quite a while. And finally somebody called me and says, hey, well, we're on our way to pick up the car. And, you know, it's winter now, and it's cold outside, and I'm just thinking, that POS is never going to start in this kind of temperature. So they say they're on the way. So I got out my old beater Tornado with a set of jumper cables. The battery in the Bentley is in the trunk, so it's got about a 12-foot long cable between the trunk and the starter. And, you know, I hook it up and let it try and charge up and press the starter button, and it gives a healthy and that's about it. And so I leave it charging as best I can. The guy shows up in a rented box truck.
But they had ramps.
A rented box truck with a couple of ramps.
Just off the ground.
Moving ramps. And it's not designed to take an automobile.
Especially a big one.
How do you think you're going to get in there? Well, we just got to get it up the ramps. So how do you think we're going to get it up the ramps?
Well, the guy said it always started, and if it didn't, they just pushed it off onto the loading dock.
Yeah, it pushes off just good. It doesn't push in so good. So we decided first, since it wasn't going to start with the starter, I decided, well, look, these things have a hydromatic in them. They're built under license. So it had a hydromatic, and you can push start a car with a hydromatic. So I told the guy to get in the Bentley, and fortunately, the bumpers on the Tornado 71, 72 were just about right. They lined up with the Bentley bumper fine. As long as you pushed them and not follow it around the corner, as long as you're straight, they lined up fine. So I get it down to the end of, anyone who's been to my shop knows I'm a block off of Route 30. So we get the car down to Route 30, I give it a shove to make it around the corner, and we start heading eastbound on 30. And I tell them, just turn the ignition on and put it in low range. And so we push it the mile between 80th Avenue and Harlem Avenue. We get to Harlem Avenue, it hasn't even coughed or spit. So we get it turned around and we try it again, push it all the way back, nothing. Get on my street, push it down my street, nothing. It's not going to go. And it's just not going to go. The starter is totally ineffective. And I said, well, what do you want to do? He said, how else can we get on there? I said, well, I can push it and get it up to, up to speed, but when I get to the ramp, I got to stop because, as you know, when a car goes up the ramp, the alignment of the bumpers immediately goes away, and either I'm going to be pushing against the trunk lid of the Bentley, or if I stop, the Bentley's going to roll into my car. So I said, well, look, I will push it, but you're going to be driving the Bentley. I want nothing to do with getting this thing into the truck. So we moved the truck down a couple of houses, and I pull the Bentley backwards to the end of the block, and I line it up, and I get in the Toro, and we push it up to about 30 miles an hour, which is going pretty fast.
On the ice.
Well, it was snowing. It was terrible outside. And the Bentley hits the ramps and goes BAM! Like that, and gets about as far as the back tires, but not quite in the truck yet. So let it roll back out again, drag it down the street, go a little faster this time. And we did this probably about 5 times, and I'm sure everybody was looking out their windows and said, what the hell are those guys doing? So I don't know how fast we were going, but we could not get it in there. I mean, those cars are at least 6,000.
Oh, yeah.
At least 6,000. And so the only thing I could think of was we needed to go faster, but there wasn't enough room to make it go faster. So we moved the
truck
down to Woodvale, which is another half a block down.
Down by the school.
Well, yeah.
So it was kind of downhill.
Yeah. So we moved it there, and I dragged the car back, and this time we got a good long run at it, and we were probably going 45. And
Wait. Now this is with the guy that thought this car was going to start and drive in there. Yeah, okay. At the helm.
I got it going that speed, and I stopped, and the Bentley hit those ramps. How they did not fold up, I don't know.
I thought they did bend.
Well, they might have been bent a little bit, but they didn't collapse.
No, they didn't collapse.
And there was a cloud of rust and stuff when it hit the ramps, and the car jumped a bit, and the right rear quarter panel hit the side of the truck, and it there was Bondo and paint.
Anyway, so this is done, and he didn't speak to me for about 10 years after this. And
More like 3.
so, I go to the Auburn Auto Auction most every year, and by gosh, one year there it was, and I thought, oh, this can't be that car. So I look at it, and I look in particular at the right quarter, and of course it's that color. It looks kind of like a Mako paint job. It's the interior was just like you said, cracked, and the front's black, and the back is pink, and it had some things hanging down in it, and it's that car. and
By the way, those are the pictures that Rick took.
Yeah. So, well, they ran it through the auction about 3 years running, and I don't even know if the thing ran, and it didn't sell. So and this is probably 3 years. And a friend of mine lives in Auburn and has got a hand at the Natmus Museum, which is the old L-29 Cord assembly plant, and he takes a group through it. He shows us this place and how cool it is. And he says, if anybody wants to go down to the basement, there's some really cool stuff in storage down there. But he says, it's kind of standing water, and there's only like a light bulb down there. But he said there's probably some cool stuff. So we go down, and there's rows and rows and there in the corner, in the dark, kind of under the stairwell, was that thing. And I thought, oh no, it can't still be there. And we look at it, and yes, it was. And Susan took the pictures, I'm sure, with, and I've got a friend, Rich Voorhees, who's quite he's kind of an artistic genius that actually made that. And, he made that, and I specifically took it to, I think it was your 60th. 50th? Well, okay.
And Linda made the frame.
But yeah, we wrapped it up and took it, and I thought, well, we'll rub salt in the wound with this thing.
Well, in the aftermath of all this, I went to court and tried to explain to the judge what was going on and what had happened, and basically tell the truth as best I could. Well, they don't care. So I got my found guilty $50 fine. Now, you went to court.
I had my license suspended for too many tickets, speeding tickets. A friend of mine, I hope there's no representatives of Illinois law enforcement agency in here, and you can blackmail me with this tape
Statute
here.
of limitations.
Okay. My friend Greg Denning, who's older than me, worked for Electro-Air Division of Emerson Electronics. And Greg, they'd sent me this thing where you could get a restricted permit. And Greg looks it over and says, well, I think we can bullshit our way into getting you a permit. And he did. And he filled this thing out, and then he gave me this box full of electrical buzz clicks and relays and tools and, this little wooden crate. And he said, put this in your trunk, and anytime if you get stopped for any reason, you're working for me, you're on your way to a walk-in cooler somewhere. I said, okay, but my permit was only good like Monday through Friday, 35 miles from home, and it was only good for like 6 in the morning till 7 at night. Well, it expired, and my friend Greg looks at that and says, we can do better. And he fills this thing out again, and I get a new one that says pretty much unlimited Monday through Friday, but nothing on the weekends, but pretty much unlimited miles and unlimited time. So I went to court, and it's downtown in Chicago, and it's pretty scary, and and I'm thinking, if this fine was going to be, he stood the $100, and I worked it out with him, and I thought, man, if I get a fine here, I don't know what I'm going to do. So my friend Greg went with me, and he wears his suit, and he goes to court, and they read out the 2 charges, and the judge asked a couple of questions, and Greg said, do you mind if I speak for him? And the judge said, okay. And Greg went on to tell him what a highly valued employee I was of Electro Air, and that they had a booth set up at the World of Wheel show, which they didn't, because none of this was true, and that I had stayed and taken this booth down, which in a way was true, because I was working for the group doing other stuff. I wasn't just hanging out. And anyway, Greg then said, you'll see that the arrest was about 12:45, and it was about 10 minutes from McCormick Place, and if you'll see, his permit says Monday through Friday. And so he said he waited on purpose till it was after midnight. So it would be Monday morning before they left. And the prosecuting attorney said, well, what about the stoplight? And I said, there was a show car involved. I was following. When the man stopped and turned left, I wasn't getting left there. I followed him. And I said, so then the judge asked me that. Then the prosecutor looks at both of us and said, Your Honor, it is obvious that this man is a valued employee, that his employer would have taken valuable time off of his work schedule and come to court to testify on his behalf. I vote we dismiss these charges. And I don't know, I never lied about something so much in my life, and of course, I was about to shit my pants during most of it. And after that, I was trying not to laugh. So Greg and I, we get out of the building as fast as we could. Of course, I went in and lied through my teeth and got off. Kirk, on the other hand, went in and pled, guilty through, circumstances and had to pay the $50. So, anyway.
I do have a question. You got off on your ticket.
Both of them.
Yeah. They refunded you the bond?
I never got any money back.
Of course not.
I asked that because you paid Harry. You said you'd stand good for it, so you must have still been there. And, because I don't remember talking to anybody there, but the $100 came, and I sure don't remember getting any money back. But if I did, you had paid it, and I'd worked it off with you. Yeah. So, I did O-rings and O-rings and O-rings and whatever. So, that I don't...
You paid the money?
I fronted it.
Well, you mean to give back to the producer?
I don't remember. God, it was so long ago.
As I recall, you guaranteed it to be okay. But since Harry was counting it, and you're the only person I know at the time that would have had $100 on you, I think you actually paid it. And because I know that I worked at the fair shop doing O-rings and whatever else needed done, and it was cold on the floor in there in January and February. Yeah, but I So if the 100 got refunded, and I've been told by other people that even though you're supposed to get it back, once Cook County has your money, you're never seeing it again. So
I suppose that's true. All right, folks. Well, that was pretty much the long and the short of the story. This story is also available on our website,
and it's every bit of it's true.
Oh yeah, it's all true.
The names haven't even been changed.
Anyhow, if you'd like a better look at the Beatles Bentley, you can see the pictures that Rick had, the photographs. Also, down in front of it is an article from, what was it,
The local paper in
Local
Frankfurt.
paper.
Somebody asked me about the car and said, well, we see this really odd car in front of your house. And I said, well, that's just the Beatles Bentley. Oh, really? So the photographer from the newspaper came out. They said, I want to take a picture of this. Okay. So I moved the 2 corners away that were on either end of it, and they took a picture of it.
So you can see what it looks like.
Well, you know, we had to shovel it out.
Yeah, because of snow.
Yeah, but
And they took a picture of the good, well, that was before we wrecked it. Yeah.
now, since then, I have investigated this, and it belonged to this. I think the guy was an interior designer. He had a company. I forget what it was named, but he rubbed elbows with the rock and roll guys back then, and. You know, Jim Morrison would go and they'd go drinking and hanging out, and you know, John Lennon got hauled in it a couple of times in the real world, and but that's mostly what he did with it, and you know, he made it like that on his own, looking somewhat like the one that John Lennon really had, and this guy somehow his business got absorbed into Apple Records, so. The ownership of it transferred then to Apple, but this was, you know, a lot later. But it supposedly left, you know, when it hit the road, that APL 222 was its plate, which isn't on it in the pictures.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have to call this because Linda's calling time.
Yep.
And it is time that we need to start packing up here. So anyhow, if you want to take a couple minutes.